Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ksenia and I make videos for people who like myself are going through the family immigration process. I'm not an immigration attorney. My videos are based on publicly available information, my own experience, and the experience of my subscribers. And the purpose of my channel is to give you guys the confidence to go through this process completely on your own. I frequently get a question whether an intending immigrant can quote-unquote sponsor themselves. Majority of the time I get this question for marriage-based green card cases, especially in a situation where the petitioning sponsor doesn't make enough income or doesn't make any income at all, and then the intending immigrant, the beneficiary spouse, does work in the United States, does make income, and they're wondering if they can use their own income to qualify to sponsor themselves on the Affidavit of Support. In the first part of this video, I'm going to talk about some considerations before you move forward with this decision. And then in the second half of this video, I'm going to guide you through specific parts of the Affidavit of Support form that you must fill out correctly in order to be able to qualify to use your own income. So first and foremost, depending on how long you, the intending immigrant, have been living and working in the United States and paying taxes, you may be eligible for an Affidavit of Support exemption in the first place. That is something that you can explore by watching my video on the form I-864W and also reading the form I-864W instructions to see if you even qualify to be exempt from having to submit the Affidavit of Support and all the evidence that has to be submitted with it in the first place. It all depends on how long you have been present in the United States and how many Social Security credits you have earned, but that is something that you should definitely explore. Now let's talk about three things that you need to consider before you choose to use your own income on the Affidavit of Support. Firstly, you must be eligible to work in the United States. This means that you must be in a status that allows you to work in the US. So that means that you have either a student status, OPT, CPT status, maybe you are currently on H visa, or maybe you are on L visa, O visa, or perhaps you have DACA, TPS, or asylum status that allows you to apply for work authorization and work in the United States legally. And although USCIS does forgive immediate relatives of US citizens for working in the United States without proper work authorization, when it comes to using that kind of income on the Affidavit of Support, USCIS will in fact request that you provide proof of your status showing that you indeed were eligible to work in the United States. So if you were on a visitor visa, on B visa, you are not in fact allowed to work on that kind of visa. And so that income probably will not be considered by USCIS, even though it might be forgiven for you if you are an immediate relative of a US citizen. The second condition you must keep in mind is that you must have paid US taxes on the income that you have made. This is because you will have to provide copies of your US federal tax returns to show that the income that you have made was in fact legal, and you cannot use any income obtained under the table or any kind of income that you have obtained using someone else's Social Security number. And in fact, using someone else's Social Security number is a crime, and it is something that can get you in a lot of trouble. One question you may have is that if you as the beneficiary have just started working in the United States recently and you haven't yet paid taxes on that income, can you still use your own income? Unfortunately, USCIS is not flexible in that regard. Of course, it never hurts to try to include this kind of income on the Affidavit of Support. However, in a lot of cases, if you do not have US tax returns to show for that, it is very likely that they will issue a request for evidence asking to obtain a joint sponsor. And the third condition you need to consider is that your income must meet the income requirements based on the federal poverty guidelines. You can check those out on the USCIS site. I will also put it in the link under this video. And that is, you must meet at least 125% of the poverty guidelines in order to qualify. And all of it is also based on your household size. So you must also first accurately calculate your household size. Now, in the second half of this video, like I said, let's look at the specific parts of the Affidavit of Support that you must fill out correctly in order to be able to qualify to use your own income. And the one thing that I need you to keep in mind is that the petitioning sponsor will always have to fill out the Affidavit of Support first. They will always have to be the one to put their name down in Part 1 and indicate that they are the petitioner. Even if you're choosing to use a joint sponsor, even if the petitioning sponsor doesn't make enough, either which way, they must still fill out the form I-864 and they must be the one to sign it as the sponsor. The first part I would like you to pay attention to is page 4, part 6. Here you will need to provide information about the employment status of the sponsor, in our case, the petitioning sponsor. Let's say, for example, our petitioner is our spouse and they are a homemaker and they make no money at all, and they also do not receive any kind of unemployment benefits, nothing. So in our case, they make completely zero income. So what you will do is you will select question 6, which says unemployed since. You will then also indicate the date since which the petitioner has been unemployed. And in question 7, you will write the annual income estimate of the petitioning sponsor themselves. We can simply write $0 in question 7. If, however, the petitioner receives, for example, unemployment checks, here you can indicate an annual estimate of how much they receive in unemployment, for example. So maybe it's $10,000, then you can round up and just say $10,000, for example. But if the income of the petitioner is not enough, this is where you, the beneficiary, come into play. Now let's look at questions 8 through 10 on page 4. This question asks us to provide the income that the petitioner will be using from anyone else in the family to support the intending immigrant, including, under certain condition, the immigrant themselves. So here in question 8, you can write your own name. In question 9, you will write how you are related to the petitioning sponsor. In our case, Jane Doe is the spouse beneficiary, and that is exactly what I chose to write in line 9. And then in question 10, we will write how much money does Jane Doe herself make per year. For example, in our case, Jane Doe makes about $50,000 a year, and this number can be a roundup estimate of how much she makes. You can also base it on the W-2s from previous year that you have received, but that is what you would write in this section. Now, let's look at the next page, page 5, questions 20 through 22. Question 20 simply asks us to provide a total sum of all incomes that we have listed on the previous page. So for instance, in our case, the petitioning sponsor makes $0 per year, and then the immigrating spouse makes $50,000 per year. So the total number in question 20 will simply be $50,000. Again, it is simply a sum of all incomes that we have listed. And I highly recommend that you fill out this form using the Adobe Acrobat Reader on your computer, which you can download for free from the official Adobe site. I will also link it under this video. But it is very important that particularly for this form, you fill it out in Adobe program on your computer and not in the internet browser, because it will make your life so much easier calculating household size, calculating all of these values automatically. Let's move on to questions 21 and 22. Now, these are the two questions that cause the most confusion, and these are the two questions that I frequently see people make a mistake in. Question 21 refers to any people listed on the previous page, as we have discussed, any family members of the petitioning sponsor who will contribute their income. So generally, these people will have to complete a form known I-864A. I do have a video breaking down this form in further detail, so please check out that video to see if you can be the kind of household member who qualifies. To put it simply, I-864A, it allows the household member to list out their own income in order to add it to the sponsor's income. However, this is where you need to pay attention. If the person listed on the previous page is the intending immigrant, in our case it was Jane Doe, and Jane Doe does not have any derivatives immigrating with her under the same petition, then she does not need to check off this box 21, and she does not need to complete the form I-864A. In our case, Jane Doe will simply ignore question 21 and move forward to question 22. She will put the check in question 22 and she will write her name next to question 22, which is the question that says that the person who is in the petitioner's household is also the person who is immigrating, and they don't have any derivatives coming with them. So they don't need to complete this form 864A. You may be wondering, if you as the beneficiary also have children who will be immigrating with you, aren't they your dependents? Don't you still have to fill out this form 864A? Let's break this down further. If you are married to a US citizen, in that case, you still do not have to fill out the form I-864A, simply because they're not under the same petition. Now, if, on the other hand, you as the beneficiary are married to a permanent residents, as you know, are able to fill out only one petition I-130 for their spouse and any children or stepchildren. If you as the beneficiary still want to use your own income, because you have derivative children under the same petition, you will have to fill out the form I-864A. Let's move on to questions 23 through 25. Question 23A simply asks us if the petitioner filed taxes for the past 3 years, including the most recent year. If the petitioning sponsor has not filed taxes for even one of the most recent 3 years, then they have to check the box no. So like in our example, the petitioning sponsor has not filed taxes for the third most recent year, 2020, as you can see, and therefore has 0 in taxes to show. Now, in that case, you will also have to move forward and check off question 25, and they will attach proof that they did not file those taxes, and they will attach an explanation as to why. Numbers listed in 24A and 24B, in our example, we decided that Jane Doe, the beneficiary, has been filing taxes with her petitioning spouse for the past 2 years. You will simply look at the Form 1040, which is the tax return form. You will look at the total income line, which is line 9 on the tax returns, and you will copy the amount listed on that line in questions 24A through C. Now, because they filed their taxes jointly, these tax returns are also considered the petitioner's tax returns, so we can write those amounts here. Now, if the petitioner and the beneficiary has not filed taxes together at all, and the petitioner hasn't been working at all, then all you would have to write in these lines is simply 0, or however much the petitioner's tax returns actually show. For Jane, in that situation, in our scenario, Jane will have to provide copies of jointly filed tax returns, and she can only provide one copy of that. She doesn't need to duplicate it for the petitioner and for herself, so one copy is sufficient for those 2 years. And then in our case, because Jane filed separately in the year 2020, she will also have to provide her own individually filed tax returns for that year. I hope that this video cleared up some of your doubts. Let me know if you have any additional questions. Check out the playlist I have dedicated to the Affidavit of Support, because it has a lot of very useful information and tips on how to fill out the form. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Give this video a like so we can help more people. And I hope to see you guys in my next videos. Bye!